protect them during the long journey to the land that God promised them. However, gold was required to manufacture the box of the Ark of the Covenant, so possibly that's why he told them. Mm. The Ark would have been too heavy to remove from the pyramid, yet he would have easily been able to remove the tablets to show the children of Israel and tell them about the Ten Commandments once he was far away from the Egyptians who were chasing them. It was interesting when I found out that the Hebrew word for the Ark is pronounced Aaron, which is spelled A-R-O-N. And the word for the Moses' brother Aaron is spelled A-A-R-O-N. Both have similar sounds.
Yes, very.
Was it a coincidence? Yeah. But is it a coincidence that the pyramid, word for pyramid in Arabic is pronounced Haram, spelled H-A-R-A-M, and they dropped the H, so it normally sounds like Aram. So the sounds are all more or less similar. From the length of the description of the Ark, it seems that Moses would have had a template. As I mentioned, it's so many verses it tells you how it was made. Moses died before the children of Israel arrived in the Promised Land, and it was King David who brought the Ark to Jerusalem, and Solomon his son, who became king, constructed an elaborate temple to house the Ark approximately 500 years after it was made. According to the Old Testament, in chapters Kings 1, verses 8 and 9, it says, "There was nothing in the Ark except the 2 stone tablets that Moses had placed in at Haran, where the Lord made a covenant with the Israelites after they came out of Egypt." That was the actual last mention of the Ark, and that's when it disappeared from the scriptures. Nobody knows what happened to it. There was another reference in Chronicles 2, chapter 35, verse 3, which says, "Put the Holy Ark in the house which King Solomon, son of King David of Israel, built, and you need not carry it on your shoulders." But the actual Ark disappeared when it went into the Solomon's temple. No other mention was it?
Right.
It seems like it was the Exodus was some sort of a divine plan.
Now, what makes you think that it was a divine plan?
The Israelites are probably not all Hebrews, but people have believe in God. They were only a minority of the population on earth at that time, and were not able to spread the name of God further than themselves. So a man named Jesus, which is also named as Yahuwah, came on the scene a few hundred years later.
Yeah.
And after he died, Christianity was formed, whereby millions more people believed in God. But that didn't seem to be enough to please God, so yet another man in 570 AD called Muhammad was born, and after he died as a prophet, the Muslim religion was formed, whereby millions more believed in God. So that was some sort of a divine plan.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I know how you made the distinction between Jesus and Yeshua, because the letter J is only 400 years old, and so there was never a Jesus, as it were, because the letter J is relatively recent in human history. So, I mean, Yeshua, but everybody knows him as Jesus, so that's cool. It's technicalities, really.
Okay.
How does this all connect? How does all of that connect to you personally?
As I first mentioned, throughout my life I've had many paranormal experiences. 2 outstanding, which I'm not going to talk about now, were finding an adopted child that was unknown, had an unknown sister, which was my first wife, which was a family secret. Although we lived in England, I found that her in Australia about 2 weeks later. The other discovery was finding my great-great-great-grandfather whilst I was living in the USA. It was another interesting story. Anyway, I guess my Arkquest began the night of the Chinese New Year back in 1991. That was a couple of years after my wife, Mary, and I purchased a new home in Las Vegas. What happened was I woke up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night after a vivid dream of continuing seeing floating numbers 3, 6, and 9. They were so vivid, it was just like not having a nightmare, but there were just big numbers coming up on the screen in my head. The following morning I told my wife, who's Chinese, and she mentioned that the number 9 is strongly associated with the Chinese dragon, a symbol of magic and power. And 9 also symbolizes the emperor. And the number 9 can be found in many ornaments on the Forbidden City. And a well-known district in Hong Kong, which a lot of people know and called Kowloon, that literally means 9 dragons. Number 6 signifies celestial power, and number 3 represents heaven, mankind, and earth. So those numbers were pretty powerful. A few weeks later, I met an elderly religious Mormon scientist named Harvey Jepson, who visited us after driving 12 hours from Utah to Las Vegas in his truck. An old man to do, he was probably in his 80 years old, an old man to do that was quite special. Yeah. He developed a formula to make many substances 8 times stronger than concrete, including sand and salt. Unfortunately, his accountant embezzled $2 million from many of his clients to buy shares in the company he formed, and the old man was not only humiliated, but his company went into liquidation. And his partner bought out the machinery and samples from the bank, but was unable to make products as the scientist did not trust him and kept the actual formula to himself. Harvey and I was about to visit the UK and asked me to become his partner to promote his product, as he wasn't allowed to do it in the USA. Within a few days, I made headlines in the media and had the samples tested, and from many of the companies which I contacted. Realizing that I need a base, my wife and I, well, we needed a base to be in Europe because we couldn't do everything from the USA. So my wife and I chose southern Spain as where we could be because the weather was warm and we're used to that climate. And then on impulse, we just bought a villa. Little did I know, without knowing, that this story would never have been told. If I never went to Spain, I wouldn't be here to tell it because everything seemed to have happened. Anyway, apparently Harvey's ex-partner heard what I was doing, and his lawyers warned me not to continue. But in any case, I sent the samples to Harvey to test. Yet when I went back to Las Vegas, I discovered that Harvey disappeared. Apparently the lawyers had frightened him, and later I found out that Harvey fled to another state and died. So ended my would-be multi-millionaire career.
Wow, that's crazy. It seems game-changing inventors always get threatened.
You're right.
You know, you mentioned earlier about psychic events and synchronicities. Can you tell me more about that specifically?
Well, early one morning, while sitting in my home in Las Vegas, I found myself staring at a large map of the world which was hung on the wall in front of me. And I seemed to have been hypnotized to it because for some reason I felt impelled to walk over to it and put my index finger in the center of the map with the thought that this was the center of the world. And as I did that, my finger started moving an inch or so to the east of that point. And the tip of my finger started becoming very warm and it got hot. I got a bit nervous. Without knowing why, I kept saying to myself that something important was buried there. Perhaps I've subconsciously map dowsed. You know what map dowsing is, don't you? As I heard about dowsing many years later, and people put their fingers on maps and found different places. Anyhow, I got a large ruler and drew 2 lines crossing at the center. In other words, from top left to top bottom right and top left to bottom left, whatever. And I told my wife about the incident and she said, oh, I must be dreaming, forget about it. But before selling our newly constructed house in Las Vegas, we began taking Spanish lessons as we intended living in Spain permanently. It's difficult for my wife to pronounce and learn Spanish, so I had a crazy notion for her to be regressed into a past life where she may have known Spanish. Stupid thought, but I thought, well, let's try it. So I contacted a local hypnotist named Evelyn Shift, who wanted to regress her but wouldn't charge. She thought it was a good idea. We became friendly with her, and she mentioned that one of the people she knew practiced paranormal automatic writing, which was something I'd never heard of. But early one morning, a few weeks later, while sitting in my same office, I felt a tempt to try and do this writing. So I placed a pen in my hand, and with the tip on the blank tip of the pen was on a blank piece of paper, and I closed my eyes, keeping my mind free of any thought. A minute or so after, I sensed my hand moving, and when it stopped, I opened my eyes, and on the paper were written, scrawled on the paper was the words FINDTHEARK, find the ark.
Yeah, find the ark.
Didn't mean anything to me, so I attempted doing it again, and once more the words appeared, find the ark. It happened again on my third attempt, and I just sat there pondering what these strange words meant, because I had no idea what the ark was or anything else. Anyhow, without any conclusions, again, I put my hand on the paper and started to do the automatic writing, wherever it come through, and I felt my arm swinging across the desk as though someone had pulled it, and my hand started making crosses and circles all over again and seemed to be the same area. And I got nervous, and I looked to see what I was done. To my amazement, my atlas of the world, which was opened, and I certainly hadn't taken it off the bookshelf, but it was open to a page, and that mystified me, because most of all the cross and circles were in the area of Egypt, just where my finger heated up on the Walmart earlier. I felt very strange that this had happened, because the atlas wasn't there. I mean, I could swear it wasn't there. There was no reason why I would have had the atlas in front of me.
Right.
Anyhow, I once again closed my eyes, and with a pen on the paper as before, I kept thinking to myself, who the hell's making me do all this? And the pen started moving again, and when I looked, this time the word MOSEC was sprawled across the paper.
Mosec.
The word didn't mean Mosec, yeah, it was like MOSEC, but the word didn't mean anything to me. I've never heard of it before, but it sounded like the biblical name for Moses. So I began the writing again, and eyes closed, and I said out loud, is this supposed to be Moses? I did it 3 more times, but the same word appeared, Mosec. None of this made any sense to me. It just didn't make any sense. A few days later, I tried automatic in my wife's presence, and that was on the 18th of August, 1991. I've made notes of all this and all what I've been doing. In fact, I've even kept all the pages and everything I've been written on, the actual pages.
Yep.
When the words Mosec and the ark kept appearing, and she asked whether we'd get any other information. And surprisingly enough, some words appeared, the word agent, box, described in Bible, Egypt, Spain, help mission will be successful, don't open the box, 2 persons will be present, peace around the world, and the word Oslo. All this makes sense to me. But we now realise that the ark, that it was the ark, this ark that they kept mentioning on the paper. And on other occasions, and plenty of times, I used to start writing. When I started doing the automatic writing, I'd start drawing beautiful flowers and pictures, which I'm not an artist and something I could never do.
Right.
Anyhow, 2 years later, we found that there was a peace treaty signed in Oslo between PLO and Israel. And we got this from this psychic writing, 2 years earlier.
Right, because you dated everything, yeah.
Yeah, I dated the whole lot, and we've actually got the paper. So if anybody wanted a DNA, if they wanted to find out whatever they want to do to find out when it was written, but they could tell that it was 2 years earlier that this happened, that the actual Oslo Accord happened. But I didn't feel like doing any more writing after that, because we were busy packing and shipping all our stuff